is a test. For the next 14 minutes, this channel will conduct a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
This might feel abstract, but it's real and it's pressing. We need to talk about it.
We're looking at a world that is dividing between democracies and autocracies. And
these issues are more connected, I think, than most people realize.
Has it become a question not of if, but of when China might take military action?
Look at what's happened in Ukraine. That said, partnerships and alliances and coalitions don't win wars. Combat credible forces, allied and together, win wars. So if conflict happens, I'm confident we're prepared to fight it.
How different would a conflict in the Pacific be from what we're seeing unfold, the land war in Ukraine?
So how might an invasion look? Well,
Taiwanese Air Force for Chinese military aircraft southwest of Taiwan, who have entered our southwestern air defense identification zone and are jeopardizing aviation safety. Turn around and leave immediately.
Chinese fighter jets and warships are sealing off Taiwan.
It's a self-ruled island of 23 million people.
Washington has called for restraint, saying it is monitoring Beijing's action closely.
While Taiwan has been self-governing since 1949, the ruling Communist Party in the mainland sees it as a breakaway province which must be reunited with China. By force, if necessary.
China has a defense budget of $230 billion, while Taiwan has a defense budget of $16.8 billion. China's active personnel stand at 2 million, and for Taiwan, the number stands at 170,000. Reserve personnel for China stand at 510,000, and Taiwan's is 1,500,000.
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has announced that all men will be required to serve 1 year's military service. The announcement came after China carried out one of its biggest incursions to date in the seas and skies around Taiwan on Sunday.
Taipei is trying to strengthen its army by extending the military service and training female reservists.
I think the country's problems concern us all, so I thought I must come.
Coming to tank strength now, for China it stands at 5,250, and for Taiwan it stands at just over 1,000. China has 35,000 armored vehicles, and Taiwan has close to 3,500. In terms of fighter aircraft too, China's fleet overwhelms that of Taiwan's. China has 1,200 fighter aircraft, and Taiwan has just 288. Attack helicopters, China has 281, and Taiwan 91. China has at least 79 submarines, and Taiwan just 4. China has 41 destroyers, and Taiwan 4. China has a fleet strength of 777, and the number for Taiwan stands at 117.
And in the backdrop of all of this is China's growing relationship with Russia.
This is a David and Goliath situation. That's why it's important to keep a strong military reserve and maintain a certain level of combat readiness amongst our reservists.
Taiwan is our 8th largest trading partner. And if you look at international trade, 60% of trade comes through the Taiwan Strait.
An incredible amount of the world's commerce transits through the South China Sea, the Luzon Straits, the Malacca Straits, the Taiwan Straits. Should conflict occur in Taiwan, the Philippines would be affected, as would Japan, as would several other nations bordering the South China Sea and in this area of the world.
For the last 2 years or so, China has been carrying out almost daily incursions into Taiwan's ADIZ, as they call it, the Air Defense Identification Zone.
Robin has counted more than 600 incursions like this in the past 4 months.
Taiwan's foreign minister tells CNN that China is, quote, trying to get ready to launch a war against Taiwan.
China's President Xi has instructed his military to be ready to invade Taiwan.
From the east side of Taiwan, there's no longer any safe zone for Taiwan to actually preserve its military capability.
There's several countries that have claims to islands in the South China Sea that the PRC have decided they're not going to respect those claims.
The Chinese BZK-005 drone encircled Taiwan for the first time.
Really sandwiching Taiwan in a way that it's going to make it a lot harder for any kind of outside support, which means that a blockade in the future might in fact just going to be the right direction and the right strategy for China to really impose on a potential Taiwan invasion.
Experts say China's military actions show off its ability to surround Taiwan, blockading them and deterring allies from intervening.
Beijing's way of handling the differences between Taiwan and China is through coercion, military threat, and the threat to use force against Taiwan.
There's genuine concern there.
Protecting Taiwan, protecting our home is our own responsibility. You can't defend it, it's not yours.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
Defending everywhere is defending nowhere. So we certainly wouldn't try to do that.
U.S. forces, U.S. men and women, would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
We are ready at any moment if China wants to launch a war against Taiwan.
So now the question is, how worried should we be about China's war games becoming
a military attack on the island?
China has launched an inspection of ships in the Taiwan Strait that includes moves to board vessels.
Chinese boats damaged undersea internet cables between Taiwan and its outlying Mazu Islands. The cables have been damaged more than 20 times in the past 5 years.
Taiwan's defense ministry says it spotted nearly 90 aircraft and a dozen Chinese ships this morning still operating nearby.
Fighter jets have been spotted taking off from a Taiwan airbase.
While a record number of Chinese aircraft flew around Taiwan, China fired several missiles, some of which landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone.
We have detected near the Kuril Islands a submarine, most likely from the United States, in the Far East Urup Island area.
We now have to start worrying about whether every Chinese satellite might not, in fact, be a disguised nuclear warhead. This is a very, very destabilizing development.
The United States also strongly condemning North Korea, saying this launch is a flagrant violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Japanese officials say the missile was launched from the suburbs of Pyongyang, flying for nearly 66 minutes and roughly 560 miles before falling into the
Kuril Islands just off the coast of Hokkaido.
So a lot remains to be seen what Tokyo will actually do.
Japan has already said it would come to the aid of its longtime friend Taiwan if it were under fire from the mainland.
On the other hand, there is another Chinese carrier group that is right now about 200 nautical miles on the southeast of Taiwan's coast. And the Taiwanese Foreign Defense Ministry is closely monitoring its movement. But so far, there's no landing or takeoff from the carrier group. So they are keeping an eye on it, but they don't consider or expect there to be any major military escalation.
Warships and planes encircling the island.
4 carrier-based fighter planes were seen to the east of Taiwan, indicating that the Shandong aircraft carrier was operating in the area.
The deployment of a Chinese aircraft carrier off the east coast may threaten our air bases in Huailan and Taitung. All our jets will be evacuated to those eastern bases in the event of a war. We will have to adjust our operational plan because air and naval combat could very likely take place in the east.
Hundreds of people gathered in Manila to protest. Missile sale from Washington still needs to be approved by Congress.
But how many of these weapons have actually been delivered? The backlog is huge. Some reports say it's worth $19 billion. Just think about that.
They also discussed speeding up arms deliveries from the US to Taiwan and highlighted the threats the island faces.
The determination is probably more important than the military equipment. And this is also going to impact economically the rest of the world.
Point is, the West should focus on actual assistance, whether it's weapons, financial aid, or political support.
China has used this as an opportunity to normalize actions that any other time would be seen as Chinese aggression. They are basically salami slicing tactics that normalize missile tests over Taiwan, that normalize very proactive and provocative Chinese military actions against the people of Taiwan.
A similar hotline has been in place between the Pentagon and the Chinese Defense Ministry since 2008, but that has not always worked. Washington says that Beijing refused to pick up the phone.
After debating how the U.S. should react, lawmakers took a vote.
announcing their move.
We will be standing with our friends in Taiwan. We have forces in the region.
The U.S. set to more than quadruple the number of troops deployed to Taiwan as the island continues to face a growing threat from China. Somewhere between 100 to 200 soldiers expected to ship out in the coming months.
That are pre-positioned, we're surging forces in the region. We are also prepared to impose maximum economic pressure.
China still boasting the world's largest navy and conducting more ballistic missile tests last year than the rest of the world combined.
In other words, if they think things are going to the tipping point and they think that military action is probable, they are going to attack in every domain possible. That means cyber strikes. That means utilizing the missiles they've built to destroy our satellites, the carrier killer missiles that they've been building for the last 30 years to destroy our aircraft carriers in a war. Because they realized, it would be a bolt from the blue sort of attack to wipe us out in one big blow to basically deter us, so we wouldn't want to move forces 6,000-7,000 miles across the Pacific. Taiwan responds back. The United States starts moving forces to back Taiwan. China responds.
How about this? Taiwan is not ready for an attack by China, and that is according to analysis in the leaked Pentagon documents. Pentagon evaluations found Taipei is unlikely to effectively counter the Chinese military's air superiority, with Taiwanese officials questioning the island's ability to detect missile launches from China. The Washington Post also reports the assessments found that the People's Liberation Army's use of civilian ships has weakened our own ability to detect an attack on the island. So Taiwan can't defend itself, and we might not even know it's being attacked.
Including sanctions against most major Chinese banks, including kicking China off the SWIFT system.
China also imposed sanctions on some U.S. organizations.
Surging troops, forcing a communications blackout in Taiwan, and banning exports of electronic goods to the U.S.
So that means we are going after companies like Apple, Dell, HP. You want a new iPhone? Guess what? You're not going to get it.
Iran has been preparing to retaliate in kind by blacklisting EU armies.
The control of the algorithm, China is able to influence American public opinion.
You didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine conflict militarily for obvious reasons. Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
Taiwan is also the global capital of semiconductors, the microchips that give life to nearly every modern appliance.
Ask the dramatic question of whether the U.S. public was psychologically ready for such heavy losses.
Total deaths after 3 weeks of battle. China, 10,000, with nearly 30,000 taken prisoner. Taiwan, around 5,000 service members killed, with more civilian casualties. As for America, around 5,000 service members killed and many more wounded.
America's losses on average were estimated about 10,000 fallen soldiers and a further loss of at least 2 aircraft carriers.
More than 17,000 military personnel from the Philippines, the US, and Australia
say the Chinese forces would have to cross the Taiwan Strait with more than 100,000 troops. During this, its troops could face aerial and naval bombardment.
Like Singapore, like Hong Kong. We talked about Manila, Jakarta, Tokyo, Taipei. These are huge, populous, advanced industrial cities.
A costly victory for the U.S. Navy and Air Force. China humiliated.
But we're looking at a situation where China will be able to quietly back down and yet face no penalty for its actions.
A free and independent Taiwan and a global economic disaster.
You think that tomorrow things will just go back to normal?
It's the people of Taiwan who deal with the consequences.
It's not as severe as South Korea. And as I say,
I think you have to just prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I think that's just the way that we have to approach this scenario.
It's worthy to note the difference in the American perception of the loss of 10,000 of its soldiers versus the Russian losses over 100,000 in Ukraine.
And there is definitely a wide social consensus that Taiwan does need to strengthen its defenses.
If China doesn't fight down a weight class like Russia did in Ukraine, Taiwan stands little to no chance without worldwide support.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.